damaging for all women. So I've been called a white feminist because it's actually got nothing to do with your skin colour. It's to do with whether you adopt a certain way of unfashionable feminist thinking. So I do think that the term white feminist is used to disparage older, middle-aged women of colour who actually dare to think differently and dare to think differently than white men think that women of colour should think. And the other reason why I think it's so damaging is because it establishes this sort of hierarchy of protected characteristics, you know, if you're talking about it from a UK sense, and kind of like race, gender identity, sexuality, they all seem to sort of come higher than the really unfashionable ones, which I think are women and disability. And I do think that it's troubling because it can be very difficult for women from certain ethnic communities to speak out about the behaviour of men in those communities. And, you know, misogyny is not a race-based trait.
Right.
Brown men are really sexist, black men are really sexist, and white men are really sexist, or some of them are. And there is sexual violence against women right across all these communities. And I actually think sometimes by setting up that hierarchy, you can make it feel like women, actually Asian women or black women, they can't speak out about what goes on in their own communities because they're sort of almost being disloyal. And there's almost a sense created that because Asian men and black men are oppressed because of their race, you shouldn't call out their sexual violence and their violence against women and their misogyny. And that is so disgusting and wrong.
Like everyone hates them, right?
And I remember reading you'd written about this, and I think you said, like, what many girls in the audience will have mums who are middle-aged white women.
And they will be one day middle-aged white women. Are we saying to them that they shouldn't be women?
But I could really imagine, sort of in how I was when I was younger, that I'd have the impulse, if I saw that, I'd laugh along with it and think, oh, and it's sometimes it feels like it's been really pent up, like I've been so good all these years, like I've been really I'm really anti. I think being pro-abortion rights, I so often see this held up as like, how can I be a misogynist? I'm pro-abortion.
I'm such a nice guy.
You know, as if that is just, if I offer you that, like, I'm allowed to say whatever I like. And, you know, and it's this, but then it's also held as this kind of, particularly in debates on sex and gender, it's almost like, well, you know, if you don't agree with me, you're going to lose your abortion rights.
Yes, right.
But I do feel like there are terms, and Karen has obviously been one of them, that suddenly, like, if I use this term, it's not sexism, because I don't mean all women, I'm being progressive. I just don't like the women who punch down.
And that's what differentiates it from like Harridan or Shrew, right? I mean, there are those men on the left, like, I'm going to try not to be libelous here, someone like Galloway or Livingston, which is quite old school, hard left, that kind of sexism you saw in trade unions in the 1980s in this country. And then there are men whose names I won't mention, who are so full supporters of the gender issue, to the point that you realize that actually their ideal woman is one with a penis, and that they really do believe that all women should be feminine, because that is basically what the gender movement is saying, is that women should be feminine. And that's why middle-aged women get so beaten up in it, because we do not fit into that mold. And also we're old enough to know how stupid that is, and also have been through various issues that have been very female-centered, whether it's health or fertility or whatever. But there are certain men who love to have this impunity to shout at middle-aged women, to the point that I wonder if it's like they're shouting at their mother. I mean, that's kind of what it sometimes feels like. I mean, how much for you as a mother of sons do you find that it's kind of like teenage sons rebelling against their mother, dealing with 40-something men online?
I think I was reading Polly Barton's Pornography and Oral History, and she's interviewed 20 people about their experiences with pornography, and actually that was really kind of illuminating, because there were 2 interviews with women, I think in their 20s and 30s, where I think one of them described like finding on her partner's computer that he'd been watching gang rape scenes and you know, really horrible stuff. But she was kind of saying, oh, but you know, I don't want to get into like the sex-phobic second wave position, because that was really bad. And I think, you know, it becomes a bit, I think she mentions it becomes a bit fascist adjacent, and he gets a bit turfy if you're criticising. And it's this kind of like, they're telling themselves, I mustn't judge even, and And it's this kind of, I must be kind to the idea of this sexual liberalism, but it's withholding empathy from actually the people who are in these videos and the message. And it's really been sold to, there's a message that being kind is not being judgmental, and therefore you must be okay with these things. They're actually really horrible.